Good afternoon and welcome back. We will now consider the draft report on agenda item 4 for approval by Committee A for submission to the plenary. So the plan is to go through working paper 304, hopefully finish early, and then tomorrow consider 305 on agenda item 5, and hopefully have the afternoon off tomorrow. Agenda item 4, implementing the global air navigation system and the role of planning and implementation regional groups. 4.1, consider the economic benefits brought by aviation. 4.1, any comments? 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, 4.5 are the recommendations. We start with recommendation 4.1/1, State National Development Plans. A, Portugal.
How to do, and if you delete it, we suppose that is sufficient because it is talking on what to do, and it is what this committee should do, to describe what to do, but not how to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Belgium. Does the committee have any objections to the deletion as proposed by Portugal and Belgium? Okay, I'm seeing no objections to the proposal. And I want to confirm that there was no one wishing to speak on A. Okay, thank you. So we have A and B. We move to C. Portugal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the same line as we suggested the deletion of the last sentence of paragraph B, we'd like to introduce a small amendment on little c on the third line, immediately after the relevant national plans, and instead of consequently, we would propose to introduce as necessary. It will be up to the member states to decide. It's not, we consider that is not a consequence, but if necessary, the member states can do it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Portugal. Any objections to this item? Saudi Arabia, you wish to speak on this?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think we need to add the word modernization in the B and in C at the last of the bullet. So it would read funding for aviation modernization, and the same thing for bullet C.
Sorry, so in B we would have deleted the last part of the sentence, so there's no longer funding in B.
Okay, then I think I'm late in my observation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So is there any objection to the proposal from Portugal and C? No. We move to D. Okay, thank you. So we have completed 4.1/1. Agenda item 4, sub-item 4.2, implementing BBBs and minimum service standards. 4.6, Australia.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. This is a general comment which replies to several of the paragraphs, including it starts at 4.6. The use of the expression providing the basic air navigation services seems to undersell, I think, the point that I understand is being made with the formation of this new requirement. So could we look at an alternative word such as fundamental or essential air navigation services? Basic just sounds to me a fairly poor use of the language. Thank you, Chair.
Can you make a proposal on which one, Australia?
I would suggest fundamental or essential air navigation services, because my understanding is from the Secretariat is that these are the standards or services that we want all states to have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. So we propose to the committee to change basic to essential. Is there any objection to that? Okay, thank you. No objection. Anything else on 4.6? 4.7. Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Just want to reiterate the point that during the discussions, I indicated that Canada has completed a tremendous amount of work in Block 0, and we want to make sure that we don't see that being reflected in the fact that in the next edition of the GAMT, what will be the relations of the BBBs and the fact that some states have already accomplished some work, and I'd like to have clarification from the Secretariat, please. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Canada, and good afternoon, everybody. There is no impact in the states. The mechanisms that to implement the essential air navigation services, they would be there. They are already there. So in terms of a state impact, the inclusion of the BBBs in the Global Air Navigation Plan is none. This BBB framework, it would only allow the alignment of volume 1 and 2 of the regional air navigation plans as they are now with the global air navigation plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Australia.
Thank you, Chair, and thank the Secretariat for that clarification. Can I suggest, I thought we agreed that when there's any references to the BBBs, we would use the word proposed BBBs. I noticed in the first 4.6 we used the word draft, which is fine, we can use that, but I thought we agreed that the BBB was at this point in time a proposed framework. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Australia. We accept that that was the principle from the committee. 4.7, France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I thank the Secretariat for the clarifications regarding the relationship between the BBBs and GAMP. I support the intervention by Canada. I do believe this is a very important element to ensure that the introduction of BBBs will not lead to impacts for the states that have already implemented ASBOs. Thank you.
Thank you, France. So we move to 4.8. And I think it will change basic services to essential services. Any other comment on 4.8? See none. 4.9, same change, basic to essential. Any other comment? .10, Again, essential services. Any other comment? So we move to 4.11, recommendation 4.2/1, implementation of minimum air navigation services. A, Australia.
Thank you, Chair. Can we just suggest that in the start of that sentence, it's consider the use of more advanced technologies and procedures? I think it's more than technologies. Thank you, Chair.
Is there any objection to that change? I see none. Any other comment on A? Thank you. B? C? D? E? F? And G. Thank you. We move to sub-item 4.3, implementing ASBOs for performance improvement. 4.1.2, performance-based approach for implementation. 4.12.1. Any comment? Four point 1.2.2. Four point 1.2.3. 4.12.4, United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. The UK would like to propose in lines 2 and 3 a minor amendment. Well, minor in terms of the number of words, quite significant in terms of the meaning. Where the text on line 2 says indicators and new key performance indicators, we would seek the addition of some additional text beginning with and review the current key performance indicators based on actual and relevant data, semicolon. The sentence then continues, the definition of their interdependencies. We'd like to substitute interdependencies for interrelationship because interdependencies better describes not just the relationships, but also the impacts between the various factors that must, various issues that have to be taken into consideration. Interrelationship can be taken as simply indicating a link without defining or explaining how they impact upon one another. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom. Is there any objection to the change proposed? Okay, I see none. 4.12.5. 4.12.6. Okay, 4.13, regional and national implementation initiatives and processes. 4.13.1. 4.13.2. 4.13.3. IATA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On 4.13.3, IATA would like to suggest a small addition at the end of the paragraph to reflect the discussion during the conference, and that would be to add the words, in support of agreed operational and safety requirements. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, IATA. Is there any objection from the committee to this change? I see none. 4.13.4. Okay, thank you. 4.14, from development to implementation of SAPs. 4.14.1. 4.14.2. 4.15. We now move to the recommendation on 4.16. Recommendation 4.3/1, improving the performance of the air navigation system. A. New Zealand.
New Zealand would suggest that potentially, rather than adopt, maybe adopt and adapt the 6-step performance process on the basis that there are some countries for whom that would be too much to do, and there are other countries who may be using processes which already exceed those requirements. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, New Zealand. Any objection? I see none. B. C. D. United Kingdom.
Mr. Chairman, the UK would like to propose a split of paragraph D, please. The text that ends on line 5, air navigation plans with a semicolon, that's the point at which we would like to suggest a split. And the text that follows, consider the establishment of a group of performance experts under the Global Air Navigation Plan Study Group 2, that would be removed, but the text then of the new paragraph E would begin with, continue and expedite the work on performance related to the Global Air Navigation Plan, Doc 9750 GAMP, as currently stated, with the addition of the following text, including their review through a group of performance experts under the Global Air Navigation Plan, open brackets, GAMP, close brackets, study group, full stop. We think that that better breaks down the tasks, enables better reading, and also provides a more emphatic sort of task to be undertaken when continuing the route, the activities related to the performance related aspects of the GAMP. Thank you.
United Kingdom, can you just clarify, because you're changing both D and A, I believe. Can you just be...
A mistake, sorry, it's changing E, yeah. There's no change to D, it's a change to E, my mistake.
Okay, we'll come back to you just shortly. Ayata, you wanted to speak on D?
No, this is another intervention, Mr. Chairman. Can I proceed?
No, sorry, so we are beyond, not intervening on D. And that's Ayata.
No, we're going to suggest an addition, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So, on the United Kingdom, you're on E. So, they confirm that the committee is accepting D as is. Okay, thank you. So, United Kingdom, can you go ahead again with how you want E to read?
Yes, sorry, my mistake. It was my reading of the text. So we would like subparagraph E to begin with the text of the existing text, continue and expedite the work on performance related to the Global Air Navigation Plan, Doc 9750 GAMP, as is currently the case, with the addition of the following text. including their review through a group of performance experts under the Global Air Navigation Plan, open brackets GAMP, close brackets study group. So the first word of paragraph E would be continue.
Okay, thank you. If that is clear to the committee, do you have any objections? United Arab Emirates?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see the merit of the request by our colleagues from the UK. However, isn't it the establishment of the group is already mentioned in the draft report of agenda item 1, if I'm not mistaken? Is there any point of the repetition, or this is something different? And just seek clarification from the Secretariat, please.
Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the establishment of the group of performance that will be working under the GAMP study group. The GAMP study group will be acting as an umbrella of the 3 groups that are actually working on the GAMP. Thank you.
United Arab Emirates?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this case, we support the proposal made by the United Kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you. So no objection to the changes proposed by the United Kingdom to E. IATA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. IATA would like to suggest adding a new item to capture the support expressed by the conference for Working Paper 297. The new item would read as follows: develop an implementation process that includes early impact assessment and timely guidance support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Secretary?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Ayata, for the comments. The Secretary would like just to clarify that during the discussions of this subject, we clarified that the process is already in place in ICAO to guarantee exactly what IATA is proposing, and that some proposals that we received during the conference would be considered to improve this process already in place. So the Secretariat actually don't see the need to add that, consider this is already part of our work program. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ayata.
Thank you, Mr. President. The process as it stands, when a standard is written by a panel, the impact assessment is done after the panel actually drafts the standard and then looks at the impact. What we're looking at here is a whole new system where that impact assessment is done even before the drafting by the panel of the standard. So it is a change to the present way of doing things. We would like to see that reflected, but if it's not reflected, we'd like to be sure that it would be taken into consideration by the Secretariat as proposed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Secretary?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, to guarantee that this will be taken into consideration. It's just a small confusion between the Navigation Commission process and the Secretariat process that we have in place, but it will be taken into consideration for sure. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. United Kingdom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back to subparagraph C, line 1. Whilst I can think of parts of the United Kingdom that would be very much pleased to be involved in this initiative, I think that no county left behind means no country left behind.
Thank you, United Kingdom. ICCAIA?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. ICCAI would like also to propose the addition of a new recommendation below little e. Upstream in the report, in the section 4.12.5, the IATA and ICCAI common proposal from the working paper 165 is well captured and correctly reported as agreed by the committee. So consistently with this agreement, we propose the addition of a new recommendation, a new point, little f, that would read, examine possible operational incentives in the development of new ATM concept.
Okay, thank you. Does the committee have any objections? Okay, I see none. United States?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry to go back to this. I just wanted to thank the Secretariat for the support and consideration for IATA's intervention. Just looking back at paragraph 4.14.2, it was stated there, IATA's concerns and recommendation, and would agree that it should be under higher consideration, if not a recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Australia?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Australia notes the recommendation that was in Working Paper 165 about IATA by ICAO developing guidelines on the use of financial incentives. That's, I think, a questionable brief for ICAO. Guidance material, ICAO giving advice about financial incentives for other states. That might be a bridge too far for us. And I think that I'm happy for perhaps the working paper, which I think it already has been given credit in the text, but to make that a recommendation is of concern. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Australia. And drawing your attention to 4.12.5, the request for the paper was for operational incentives. So if the committee is happy with that the recommendation will also reflect operational incentives. Is there any objection to this? Okay, thank you. I see none. So we now move to recommendation 4.3/2, regional and national collaboration and implementation initiatives. Recommendation A. Recommendation B. Recommendation C. Recommendation D. E. F. Recommendation G. H. I. J. K. L. M. Okay, thank you. We move to sub-item 4.4, implementing search and rescue processes and procedures. Paragraph 4.17. Okay, we had paragraph 4.17, Russian Federation.
Thank you, Chairman. We would like to reflect the discussion and add a sentence on the fourth line from the bottom, after the words, it's likely to take in the future. ICAO has the task of developing guidance on GATS and then continue as per text. We would also like to add, after that paragraph, after the words standards, in particular in Annex 6 regarding information sharing and surveillance and oversight over accidents, possible accidents, and coordination centers, military and other bodies. The interpreter missed a number of those. Thank you.
Okay, Russian Federation, can you repeat it?
Еще раз.
Once again then, after the sentence likely to take in the future, that's the fourth line from the bottom, ICAO still has the important task of completing the development of provisions on GATS. And at the end of the paragraph, after the word standards, in particular Annex 6, to deal with information sharing, oversight of incidents in the air with operators and providers, ANSPs, SAR, coordination centers, as well as with other military and other bodies. Thank you.
Okay, does the committee have any objection to this proposal? ISC?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I was about to help with English if necessary, but if there is no problem, that's okay to us. Thank you.
Okay, I'm seeing no objection to the proposed amendment of 4.17. 4.18. 4.19, United Arab Emirates.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding 4A18, this paragraph refers to certain agreements on the SAR services between the providers of such services in a direct manner. And for the UAE, we do reiterate the importance of these agreements, and we encourage them. However, in Annex 12, these criteria are related to the agreements between states as per the organization's rules. And therefore, in the working papers on SAR, we have spoken about these matters, and therefore we call upon ICAO to review certain requirements included in Annex 12 that require or ask the states to sign such agreements. And you know very well that there is a big difference between agreements signed by the states on the one hand and signed by the service providers directly between themselves. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, UAE. But is there a proposal for change in the paragraph?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that there should be an amendment of the related paragraphs in Annex 12 itself, so that it would go in line with the projects that will be developed in the coming years under the light of the working papers that we have gone through during this conference. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, UAE, but we would need an actual recommendation for change to this paragraph.
Thanks, Chair. For UAE, we don't remember the discussion of this committee saying there should be actual changes to the SARPs in Annex 12, so we have not put in a recommendation to that effect, but we have noted the papers where there has been those positions of the agreements, as you suggested in there. Right now, I think we're very comfortable with the maturity of Annex 12, but if the committee thinks we discussed something differently and called for a change, we're happy to hear a recommendation for that change to the committee now. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. UAE, do you wish to speak on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we said was actually part of the UAE intervention when we discussed the pertinent working paper. We said that there is a kind of inconsistency between the annex that requires the states to sign agreements, interstate agreements, and what was actually discussed about the signing of agreements between the providers of such services. The UAE, of course, supports ICAO's main documentation. However, we call upon ICAO to review the Annex 12 in general. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, UAE. So the Secretariat will take your papers into consideration, but I'm taking it that there's no proposal for change to 4.18 as it stands. Thank you. 4.19. .20. 4.21. 4.22 refers to the recommendations. 4.41/1. N. O. P. Q. Russian Federation.
Thank you, Chair. We would like before Q to add an extra clause to continue the development of SARPs and PANs essential to determine GADS and to ensure its implementation. Thank you.
And doesn't R also take that into consideration? thank you, Russian Federation. If there's no objection from the committee, we'll take that into consideration, although that is already part of the work program. Okay, I've seen no objection. We move to R. S. And T. Slovakia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to all. Slovakia would like to suggest small change under the recommendation T. Instead of consider the need for a performance-based standard, we would like to suggest to change it like review the need for requirements for a performance-based standard. Thank you.
Good. Okay, thank you. Is there any objection from the committee? Okay, I see none. Which brings us to the end of the, okay, United States?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The United States comment does not pertain to T. We're proposing an additional final recommendation. So I can wait in case anyone else wanted to comment upon T or proceed with the U.S. recommendation.
Go ahead, United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Working paper 59 by the United States had paragraph 3.1c. A recommendation was request ICAO to include the organization of SAR in the description of all GADS functions in the 6th edition of the GAMP. We note that GADS has been recommended for inclusion in the GAMP, but SAR has not been included. The U.S. has a short sentence to consider as a new last recommendation for paragraph 4.22. The proposed text is U. Include the general organization of SAR in future editions of the GAMP. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Is there any objection from the committee to this recommendation? IOC?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No objection. Just to clarify, we support this, and the U.S. suggested to include some details of GADS, like functions, etc., etc. This would be the part of the words to be included in GAN. Is it correct understanding? Thank you.
Secretary?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, as agreed during the discussion of agenda item 1, we agreed to include GADS as a thread in the aviation system block upgrades. The details will be decided by the group of experts on that matter, but it will be included, but details to be decided.
Okay, thank you. So this brings us to the end of the review of working paper 304. We still have tea to be served at 3:30, but the committee is adjourned until tomorrow at 9:30 when we will consider 305. Thank you very much.